Hello, this is a TradeSite trade recap from July 23rd, 2012. I wanted to talk a bit. We just had a big gap down today on the market. Here's a look at the action at the close. We had this big gap down on the ES and the NDX. All the markets gap down from the news out of Spain, concerns out of Spain. And we use a lot of these various lines and tools that you see here on the screen for making our trade calls in the futures. But when you get a gap this far away from the prior day's close, it kind of takes most of what we would typically use out of play. So we have to sort of adjust ourselves and find something else to monitor on a day when the market gaps the way that it does. So let's take a look at what we did. So what you see here is this is the ES, and I've slid the chart, so this is the beginning of today. This is Monday's play. You can see the first 3 5-minute bars after we gapped way down. Okay, and instead of using all of the pivot series and the value areas and the GAN tools that we typically use to trade the futures, got to be a little more patient on a day like this where the market's gapped so far. I mean, you're talking about over 20 points on the S&P and the ES contract down in the morning. And what we're doing instead here is we're going to focus on a couple of things. We've got on this chart right now the black line right here that you see, that's the 50% retracement of the gap. I'm just pointing that out for edification. Now here's the gap, the close from Friday, the open from Monday. So that black line is going to be the exact 50% point in between. You're going to see as we trade out here, 3 lines emerge down here lower. One of them is this red line that you can clearly see. That was the opening print on the ES. There's 2 more lines kind of on top of each other that are following these bars down. One of them is going to end up being the midpoint of the day, and one of them is going to be the short-term moving average. And you can see as I move the bars forward here, you can see the separation. So the lowest of the lines are the short-term moving average. The middle line is the midpoint of the day. That's the high plus the low divided by 2. Okay, and there's also a purple line that emerges. That's called the VWAP. It's going to be pretty close to the midpoint most of the time. Now what you can see here early on is after the first 30 minutes or so we had rallied up and we ran right into this midpoint of the day. So what we've got is, of the 3 lines that we're watching, there's the opening level here, the midpoint here, and the short-term moving average here. Okay. The way that we measure market, what we call market direction here at TradeSite, is when you're below at least 2 of those lines, market direction is red. So that's the case right now at the current point on the chart. And if you're above at least 2 of them, market direction is green. And what you often see is that if you switch back and forth, you're going to get a push in the market after that change. So let's take a look and see how the market played out here. Went a little lower, as you can see, came back up here. Now we're almost an hour in at this point in time. So what we were looking for is a shift in market direction, and we had told our subscribers to go buy the ES if it broke above this midpoint, this red line that it had already been tested exactly right here by the market, to go long, which would be at 1335.50 on the ES contract. Okay, and if you watch right here, see how we base sideways? So we're holding market direction red right here so far. We're over an hour into play, and there's the bar right there. That's the bar that triggers the call. So we went long right above that red line. We usually try to sell half of our position for 6 ticks and then manage the rest of the trade. So, again, a day where the market gapped down so far, it was out of range of most of the tools that we usually use, including the pivot series, our pressure thresholds, the value areas. Couldn't use those, so instead we had to focus on something as basic as a market directional play. But again, the goal is to be green for the day. It doesn't matter how you do it. And here's how this played out. And you can see we easily got our 6 ticks, and then we continued to move our stop up. That was retest right here of the opening level. And a little while later it went a little higher, and we moved our stop up to, at this point it was at 1339.50. We moved our stop at this point back to 1338. 1338 is basically right under the opening level, and we also had what's called a 9-bar setup phase at this point on the upside, which means you often get a pause. So we had tightened our stop up. Just want to trap the gains, not turn anything into a loser on sort of a day in the market that's a little unique just because of how far that gap was. And I'll go back in a moment and show you just how far it was on the ES one more time. And then right here is where we get stopped out of the second piece of that trade. Now, let's see how the rest of the day plays out. Okay. And let me just show you as I speed this up, go through lunch, okay, and then we come back, and watch that black 50% line that I had talked about early on. That's the exact 50% difference between Friday's close and today's opening level. Okay, so here we are, we're entering the last hour of play. We're still just way down here, but look at this. Boom. Not only do we hit the black line, we hit it exactly to the tick. That's a 13, what we call a 13 Comer exhaustion signal. That's a sell signal, that red line. It's the only red arrow 13 sell signal of the day, right as the market hits the 50% gap retracement. And guess what? From that point, the rest of the day could not break through that line, and we moved lower. So not only do we have our nice trade early in the morning, but we get our Comer tool, which gives us very high probability sell signals in the market, lines up exactly with a 50% gap retracement. And just to show you one more thing, here's a look at the ES with our futures levels. This includes the pivot series. The opening today was down here near S4 on the pivot series. If you're familiar with the pivot series, that's extremely rare to reach S3 or S4 on any given day, much less to gap to it. So this was a very unique day, and we still found ways to make money.